Welcome to Evidence Based, a new Harbinger psychology podcast. We're your hosts, Cassie and Kendall.
On today's episode, we're joined by Dr. Scott Glassman, author of A Happier You. Scott is a licensed psychologist and clinical associate professor at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. Glassman's program, A Happier You, was featured on NPR and CBS through national syndication. He has appeared on SiriusXM's Dr. Radio to discuss his work on happiness. Additionally, Glassman is a contributing psychology and health writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer and www.philly.com. Thank you so much, Scott, for joining us today to have this conversation. I think it's really necessary right now to have a conversation about positive psychology and happiness.
We thought we could start off asking for a brief overview of positive psychology and how it's beneficial for negative thinking.
Yeah, so positive psychology is a field that focuses on human flourishing, well-being, and optimal living. It really looks to answer the question, not, how can we just get by in life, but how can we live the best life possible where each of us can realize our fullest potential? And that's a bit different from the traditional thinking in psychology up until the late 90s when positive psychology burst onto the scene through initiatives led by Dr. Martin Seligman, where it was a little bit more, how can we fix the problem? How can we use treatment to help perhaps get back to status quo, when we were missing a whole side of human life, which is engaged in thinking about our personal strengths, accomplishments, flow, connections with others, purpose in life. All of those areas go into how we can not just, maintain or get by or survive. And I think that's just so essential when you look at the unprecedented challenges that we're facing now as a society, from geopolitical instability to racism to climate change, racial and social and political divisions, the ongoing physical and mental health crises of the pandemic, the socioeconomic disparities, right? They all magnify this urgency of science-based approaches and needing those approaches to generate hope. So that's what I believe is the core promise of positive psychology, that it can improve our future and hope for us, not just individually, but as a global society. And as I think about it as a father too, I think about what kind of world do I want my 12-year-old son to live in as an adult? Like, how do I want him to feel? How do I want him to experience himself and relate to others? And that creates the personal drive for me, my interest as a psychologist in this area, to contribute some applied ideas that we can integrate into our daily practices and make happiness more of a skill versus something that's elusive, that either happens or doesn't happen, that is externally determined.
And Scott, can you walk us through the Happier You program and what an overview of each week looks like in the 7 weeks?
Absolutely, yeah. Happier You is a multi-component positive psychology-based program. I developed it 5 years ago at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. And the goal was to help people we were working with in our healthcare centers feel more joy and meaning in a systematic way each day. So giving them a skill set, helping them develop that skill set to become more resilient, but also to flourish. And over 7 weeks, we guide people through really 5 core processes for well-being. And they cut across models that Martin Seligman and Carol Riff have put forward. The first is attending. So how do we pay attention to our experiences in the world? Using mindfulness, in week 1, we help people apply what I call directed mindfulness, where they're focusing intently on good things that happen to them each day, and also good qualities about themselves. And then asking themselves more questions about what those events are, what they mean for them, how they affect their lives and the lives of others. So that's a very first step, week 1 step, of trying to shift away from, sometimes we have that tendency to get caught up in the negative side of life. There's a negativity bias that we can fall into based on wanting to protect ourselves. And this really helps begin that shift. Week 2, we still are working with somebody in that inside out approach. We're still working with somebody to identify within themselves what are their core personal strengths, how do they enact those personal strengths in the world, and what ways do they consider themselves having made progress. So what are their successes? So if you can think of that as a self-valuing process, we're attending and then we're also valuing. And we value ourselves by looking at what we learn, how we progress, what our unique strengths are, and how we can connect with others, which is the next process in week 3, where we start to explore the concept and practice of gratitude. So feeling thankful and appreciative of who we have in our life, what's happened for us, in addition to sharing that sense of appreciation with others, strengthening our relationships, but also, again, shifting from a deficit mindset into a fullness mindset. Now, from that inside out approach, you're taking that kind of rich storehouse, that increasing storehouse of positive feeling, positive thoughts, positive action tendencies, and moving it into how does that help me relate to the world in really positive ways. So in week 4, we can continue that track of that relationship with environment and our our work environments, our home environments, family, friends, coworkers, and looking at how lightness and humor and playfulness in life can really help us form those bonds and feel good at the same time. So we continue that pathway in week 5 by looking more broadly at enjoyable and meaningful activities. So I call this in the book the engine of life, or is what we do every day in small ways and large ways that bring us enjoyment and meaning. And what are some really intentional things that we can do to improve our sense of purpose in the world, reveal our sense of purpose in the world, and also increase enjoyment at the same time. A lot of that work comes back inward to values, but it also is outward, because when we do activities, we can do it alone, we can do it with other people. And then week 6, kindness, we focus on how we can help others while we're kind to ourselves. And that fosters that sense of interdependence and transcendence that is a 5th process in the program that we're looking at. Love is the 7th week, where we expand on this idea that we're all a global community, we're all interconnected, we all depend on one another. And if we can foster a greater level of caring for one another and for ourselves, and we can expand those boundaries, then we stand to enjoy rather a higher level of well-being in a more durable way over time. And we can create that kind of world I was talking about that we want to leave for the future generations. So the acronym I like to use is ASCENT. So attending, self-valuing, connecting with others, engaging, and transcending. It's those processes through the program that hopefully help somebody instill more of a positivity leaning in their lives.
I love that. I love a good acronym. It makes it easy to remember and digest. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about gratitude and specifically why it's important in positive psychology.
Yeah, Sonia Lyubomirsky is a happiness researcher, and she writes about gratitude as a meta strategy for happiness. And that really refers to the idea that when we're in a thankful state of mind, that we have this orientation toward the positive in life. It's a general orientation to the things that are going well and that we're blessed with. If you want to define it, it's really more of a warm sense of appreciation for something that we've received. And that could be from someone or something. And I think once we're able to access that mindset, that sense of fullness, a full heart, we are shifting our energy level and our attention from what we don't have into what we already have, and what we're thankful for and how that's improving our life already. So there's a cognitive side to this. There's a way of thinking. You can think about, if I asked you, what's one thing today that you're feeling grateful for? You may think of someone or something, or an event that occurred for you that was really positive. But then you also may have the emotional, or probably have the emotional side of that coming in, where you're feeling good in some way, hopeful, maybe loving, connected, happy, energetic, enthusiastic. So the emotional piece and the cognitive piece come together with gratitude. And the research is showing that gratitude interventions, like journaling, like paying somebody a gratitude visit where you share your thankfulness with them if you've written a letter, they're associated with positive affect, happiness, improved well-being, even some physical dimensions of health. So improved sleep has been one of the outcomes that meta-analytic studies have pointed toward, that may be particularly affected by gratitude practice, especially if you do it before bed. Life satisfaction. Sometimes people ask, so how much gratitude practice do I need to benefit from it, to feel the effects on my mood and life satisfaction? There's some research that shows it may be dose dependent, in the sense that people who practice gratitude daily, either making lists of things that they're grateful for, or journaling in some other way, daily to 3 to 5 days a week, may have more of the benefit than if you just do it maybe occasionally. But there is some research that shows just a little bit of gratitude can lead to a significant change in mood and happiness. And also what gratitude expression does, whether you cultivate it just internally or you're expressing thanks to someone, is that it strengthens the bonds that we have with each other. And in particular, in our in intimate relationships, especially if there's a little bit of insecurity or uncertainty there, gratitude has been shown to increase connection in those relationships. So it's a powerful bonding force, and it's something that, again, it's something that we can drop in. I talk about this in the book as a practice. We can always drop into gratitude. You could be driving, walking in the grocery store, sitting in your chair right after you wake up. If you just ask yourself, what am I grateful for now in this moment? And you might look around you. You might look out the window and see the trees and see nature and feel grateful for being able to breathe and be a part of the world. You may look at a photograph of something wonderful that you did with your family that's sitting on your desk, and that may be a contact point for feeling hopeful and feeling love and feeling connected and feeling positive about you and about your day. And it's that kind of frequent contact point that I would love to encourage people to try out more. And the book has other specific exercises along with the program, and how you can make gratitude a centerpiece. That meta strategy for happiness, it sits basically in the middle of a happier you in the third week as a centerpiece of the program.
Scott, I'm wondering, aside from list making, how is it possible for people to sort of experience the gratitude through all of their senses without sort of reflecting back on it? Is that possible to just sort of go about and make sure that you're cultivating that in your everyday experiences through all your senses? Or what do you think about that?
Even if you decide just to pick one sense to explore thankfulness through, so you can go in a systematic way and ask yourself, what am I seeing right now in my immediate environment, which I feel is a gift? Is really is identifying the gifts. What am I hearing right now? Am I hearing the birds sing, or am I hearing, the fact that I have a modern convenience like a dishwasher running? So we can really transform how we experience ordinary, mundane stimuli in our environment into, wow, this is something that is filling me and makes me fortunate in many different ways. And you can kind of progress through the different senses. Tasting something, think about the last time you ate something that you really enjoyed. Were you able to ask yourself the question, what makes me feel grateful for this incredible piece of fruit that I'm eating right now, and this incredible meal? What went into it? What did I have to do to make this happen? Or somebody else, what did they have to do in order to bring that gift more fully into my life? So that inquiry process through the senses, Cassie, I'm so glad you asked about that, is one immediate way that doesn't necessarily require listing or journaling, or maybe you don't have your journal with you, but you can kind of do that internally as a mindfulness based exercise.
I love the idea of experiencing gratitude through the senses, Scott. That just seems like such a way to be involved with gratitude, because I think a lot of people, when they think of a gratitude practice, they do think about just grabbing a journal and having to think of things, but to really make it more of like a sensory experience seems a lot more involved and mindful as well. Um, in the book, you talk about finding awe in your everyday life. Can you explain what that means and how we can create opportunities to find the awe in everyday life?
Well, I think there are miracles hiding in the ordinary moments that surround us. And if you look at the definition of awe, some have described it as a combination of two emotions, surprise and fear. But I rather think of it as more of a recognition, admiration, or like a deep appreciation of the complexity, mysteriousness, grandeur, or growth in the world. Something that when you make contact with it, you're transcending your immediate self-contained concerns, your individual sense of being on an island. You're connected with something greater than yourself. And that drives a higher level of meaning and a higher level of where you fit in the grander scheme of this miraculous experience that we call life. It is a process of marveling, which is another word I really like for it. So you can marvel at things that you would expect to find awe in, like looking up. I always loved looking up at the sky as a kid, and I still do, seeing the stars and the moon, and just having the sense of perspective that we're on this planet in the vast ocean of space, being supported in our life here, but having that cosmic sense is something that really reduces mundane problems, shrinks the perspective of what those problems mean in a negative sense, if you can consider the grand scale and awe in that way. But we also can have awe. You don't need stars in the moon or something grand to happen. We can find awe in ordinary things, like finding the miracle in the fact that you can type an email and hit send, and in a split second, that email is on the other side of the world. We can have awe in the fact that we have light, thinking about what's the gift in this? Is there a time when this wasn't always possible? It's a great question to foster awe. We can have awe for how we've survived adversity in our life. Sometimes we're surprised, right, by the strengths that we show when times are really difficult. So it can be object based, it can be activity based, and it can be nature. You can be connected with nature in a more profound way through awe, and it is closely linked in a happier you with gratitude. It's really an expansion or a dimension of gratitude that that sometimes can feel deeper.
I love that you said it can be an activity or anything like that. And I realized this weekend I went to an antique mall and I was looking through vintage postcards and reading sort of about how they used to correspond. Like you'd send one to say you got home from a trip visiting them, or like I found this really profound one that was like, I hope you're happy somewhere. I feel like my days are almost over. And I was like, can you imagine just like getting a postcard with that kind of news? And so I'm just making the connection now that I was kind of partaking in an awe-based activity by doing that. So I really love that and thinking of it in that way.
It's
And
it's incredible, right? Anytime you go to the doctor and you receive a medication for something that you need, and there's so much awe built into, the wisdom, the effort, the what had to come together to create that medication that's going to help you, and you're the doctor whom you may feel really connected with, and who's helping you. That how did you get to find that right provider?
Hmm.
It's the coincidences in life that we can bring in to reinvigorate when we may feel things are pretty drab or pretty mundane or pretty like you're going through the motions in a rote kind
Hmm.
of way. I think many of us have felt that way during the pandemic, and really feeling like we need those sparks more and more.
definitely. And Scott, I also wanted to say a conversation I have often with my friends is that I do feel kind of how you described the cosmic feeling of being really small in this universe, but a lot of people, when I say that, view it as a negative thing, that you're small and insignificant. But I see it more in the way that you're saying that, you know, it really zooms out on mundane problems and allows me, at least, to live a little more freely and positively, knowing that things will, kind of wash away and I can keep going. It's not catastrophic. But the zoom out mentality of remembering that I'm just a piece of, the fabric of what's happening does help. But I think a lot of people's first instinct is that they're really small and insignificant in that moment. But I agreed completely with what you were saying about how it just helps you really zoom out and have that perspective.
Yeah, and there's also a humility and curiosity that often come with finding that state of awe and feeling yourself as a part of kind of universal machinations, right? That helps you be open to experience, which we know is a strength. Curiosity in life has been a strength that's been closely tied with well-being. And awe can probably promote that.
I love that. So we talked about positivity and gratitude. Want to shift a little bit to negativity. Can you talk about the negativity effect or what you call the negativity bias?
Yeah, and one of the things I want to be clear about first is a common misunderstanding about positive psychology and books on happiness is the idea that you're potentially saying that negative experience is wrong or bad or should be minimized or pushed away. And that's not what I'm saying in the book or positive psychology is saying. It really is looking at helping us achieve a balance between the negative and the positive, and that sometimes especially, we can think of it in the context of having gone through this pandemic where we seem overwhelmed by negative news stories, negative events in our personal lives, losses, stressful events, work loss, like, right? They mount up where we find ourselves floating in what seems to be a sea of the next shoe that's going to drop. So one negative thing after the other. What some research from social psychology has told us is that we tend to respond physiologically in a stronger way to negative events versus positive events. So we may be more absorbed, devote more attentional resources when there are problems or bad things happening in the world. It pulls us into looking at those things more intently, spending more time talking about them, maybe feeling the negative emotions surrounding what those events are. And at a certain point, it may become maladaptive, counterproductive for our well-being to stay in that kind of soup of negativity. We tend to also want to protect ourselves from bad things happening. So it's kind of this evolutionary function for us to look for threats in our environment. It's a way of surviving. But survival, as we talked about in the beginning, isn't flourishing. So if we're constantly in the state of just looking for like a goalie blocking the next ball that's going to be kicked in our direction, I think we miss out on a lot of the positive side of life and being able to enjoy more fully the good things that happen to us in our strengths. So also we tend to be loss averse, so if you give somebody the option, say that there's an equal chance that you could win $10 or lose $10, somebody's more likely not to take that risk of losing, even though it's an equal chance that they may get the $10. So we focus on potential for loss, maybe more so than what we could gain.
That's really interesting, especially the analogy of the goalie and really just, you're on the defense blocking things out constantly. And it's really hard, I imagine, to position your mind to be more open to positivity and experience when you are constantly focusing on the loss and what's coming next. And especially during the pandemic where it just seems like you said, job loss and physical loss of family members and things just keeps racking up, yeah, it would be really tough. And in line with the negativity effect, can you talk about the positivity paradox and what we can do to avoid falling into it?
Yeah, and that's related to the misunderstanding of positive psychology and happiness work, that you need to just push away the negative. You need to deny it, minimize it, or just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and feel good and smile and be happy. And what happens is when we are feel coercion or force, either from outside of ourselves or within ourselves, to do that, the paradox is that we tend to feel more negative or want to stick with the negative events even more, because we've lost a sense of freedom of choice in that situation. We feel compelled. It's not, one of the basic human needs that really leads to well-being when it's satisfied is the need for autonomy and freedom of choice. And whenever that's threatened, we tend to back away from that and cling to whatever the other choice might be, even if it's not serving us well. So how do we avoid the positivity paradox? We need to be accepting and compassionate toward ourselves, and non-hurried around negative mood states, stressful events in our lives, feeling crummy for a few days if we need to. Whatever we need to do in order to say to ourselves, it's okay that I'm feeling this, because it's a part of the human experience. It's a part of our common humanity to suffer. And by acknowledging that and valuing that, because there can be a lot of lessons that we can learn, right, from from our problems, our stress, our depressive episodes, anxiety. Maybe that's there also to teach us something about ourselves. And so that is also a way of kind of stepping a little bit away from the positivity paradox, gently away from it, by looking at, what can this teach me? Asking ourselves, is there something within this that I can be curious about? And that is linked to a more mindful approach to experience in the world. So the bottom line is, the more we try to be our own self-demanding critics and push ourselves into a place of well-being and happiness and positivity, the harder it's going to be, because we're missing out on the validation, the acceptance, and the compassion that's so essential.
So I like that you brought mindfulness into the conversation. And in your book, you talk about becoming an observer of your own negative thoughts. I wonder if you can talk about what that looks like and how mindfulness comes into play in that process.
Yeah, mindfulness, and I've had wonderful mindfulness teachers, Steve Hickman, Zindel Siegel, terrific teachers, showing us, derived from the work of John Kabat-Zinn, who's been a wonderful translator of meditation into the Western world, and has really helped popularize the term mindfulness. It's the idea that we can look at experience non-judgmentally as it unfolds, moment by moment, and we can pay attention in a particular way. So we have control over our attention, where it falls, and then we can take a place of watching, take a position of being an observer to whatever is happening, as a way of stepping out of the story of whatever is happening. And that's the essence of what mindfulness is it's really removing ourselves from the story. And what that draws on, when you're having a lot of negative thoughts, a lot of negative feelings, negative things happening to you, is the idea of just what I talked about, that we can be caring of and noticing at the same time what's happening without being in the story of it. So one analogy that's often used in mindfulness is looking at your negative thoughts like leaves floating down a river, actually seeing each negative thought as a separate leaf that's passing by. Or another analogy that I really like is clouds passing across the sky of your awareness. And each of those clouds might be a negative thought or a negative feeling. So you're almost kind of watching the storm pass through. And the interesting aspect of mindfulness is, when you're able to be the observer, that the passage of negative thinking, feeling, and experience oftentimes is faster. We have an easier time of finding the clearing in the forest of our dark thoughts. And so I love the practice of starting from, let me just watch where I'm at right now. Where am I physically, emotionally, socially in my life without making a judgment on it, if possible. And if I'm judging, then I'm watching the judgment, right? So I can still be the observer of the self-critical voice, which is part of the magic of mindfulness.
I really appreciate the visuals as well because it makes so much sense to imagine the negative thoughts just going downstream, and you've seen them, you've acknowledged them, and now they're passing through. So I appreciate that. And shifting to a little bit of more of a solutions focused conversation. So I know that negative thinking and a negative attitude can really consume you. And you mentioned in the book that when it comes to building positivity and resilience, small steps matter. What are some of the small steps that people can take to try to pull themselves out of the negativity? Is it, assessing who you surround yourself with, or your community, or what kind of things go into taking those small steps?
I think this maybe even the smallest uh, step that we can think of is an intention to achieve some other state than the way we are feeling right now. So it may not even be any kind of action. It could just be you're noticing the want, the desire for a different kind of situation in your life, or some a relationship, or something related to your job, or something related to the community. That in and of itself is a cognitive step that we can take. And then small steps, sometimes I think, shortchange ourselves if the only accomplishments we're going to celebrate are the huge milestones in life, whether that's marriage, graduation, some other learning how to drive, some other kind of milestone, that we have to wait to these plateaus in order to acknowledge our strengths. And it really hides a lot of the daily strengths that each of us show every day in getting out of bed in the morning, managing a hectic household, if that's something that's part of your experience. We are drawing upon this incredible array of personal attributes that, if you're feeling down and you get out of bed and you start to take care of yourself and nurture yourself, getting ready for the day, can you identify that and celebrate that as a small step that's going to lead to more resources and more energy, maybe lifting your mood to the point where you feel like you can be more productive at work, or more focused for your family, or more engaged in your relationships somehow. So I love to help people identify what are the maybe 10 small steps that you can look at that you've taken today that resulted in something positive. Doesn't have to be a very big thing. It can be like the smallest thing, but that creates a kind of positive chain reaction. So you can trace that too. You can trace your positive activity chains by writing down what are 5 actions I took today, and how are they connected in a good way? Or what's one action that I took, and what did that lead to? Oh, because I got out of bed and had a shower, and now I actually got to the gym when I haven't done that in 2 weeks. Okay, I'm getting, as a result of getting to the gym, as a result of that small step, what happened for you? Well, I decided to eat a healthier meal. As a result of eating a healthier meal, what happened to you, or for you after that? What other decision did you make? Well, I decided then to invest more time on a challenging project at work, because that has been giving me some frustration. I felt more capable in that moment, right? And so you can follow that chain of steps into a sense of efficacy, and also identifying of where you excel. What are your signature attributes that came out that day for you?
I like that, the small steps that, sort of snowball and make for a more positive change moving forward. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about values and how those can help you sort of kickstart your positivity.
Yeah, values are a really important part of who we are and how we value ourselves. And the idea that there are certain things that we care about in the world, and it may be different from what everybody else cares about. And so what are the areas that really inspire us to get up in the morning and to pursue a line of work or a degree in school, or a project that you may be interested in? It's connecting with why we're here. What do we care most about? There is such an energy in our core values, and accessing those values and asking ourselves, what do we care most about? Because it tends to align our choices with what we care deeply about. And that alignment feels good. There's a concept called eudaimonic happiness, which refers to living a life in accord, in a virtuous way, in accord with our values. And it really speaks to some of the highest levels of personal development and flourishing that we can ever imagine, is a life where we get to, if you're an artist and your value is creativity, and you find ways to be creative every day, and you find outlets for that, then there's a high likelihood that you're going to feel pretty good about who you are and what you've created for yourself. So I like the idea of a VPS instead of a GPS, a values positioning system. We all have our VPS within us. It's a matter of kind of taking readings, taking headings, saying, where am I going? Is what I'm doing right now in my job and my family and my other relationships, with my health, is that where I really want to be going? And so we can make these course corrections and alignments, which can really lead to higher levels of well-being and happiness.
I like that a lot. Is there any activities that you'd recommend for people who might just be sort of starting out in identifying their values? Like, is there a practice for that?
So there's a couple different ways that somebody can do that. There's something called a personal values card sort, which is something that's used in the realm of motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is a way of having conversations with people that help inspire positive directions and change, and help evoke that from them. There are lists of values that you can freely find over the web, where you can look at a large list and circle the values that really stand out to you, as a way of kind of clarifying, what is your core set. There are also surveys that you can take that are available online, that are free, which will give you a listing of your strengths or values. Sometimes those terms are used interchangeably. There's something called the Values in Action classification system, where there's a survey of strengths that tie into personal values, that's available online as well. So I encourage listeners to really explore those avenues. And you could just sit down with pen and paper and just write down the things in your life right now that are important to you in each domain of living, family wise, work wise. What's most important to you? What's most important educationally, or spiritually, or in some other way.
When we're talking, Scott, about doing values work, and let's say, for instance, you're kind of starting out new in your gratitude journey, I imagine that some people coming from a negative place, or being kind of caught in that negativity, are going to have some apprehension to gratitude at first. It's trying to do the exact opposite of what they've been accustomed to, especially during the pandemic, sitting down with values-based work. Do you experience a lot of people, or a group of people, having the apprehension to gratitude, or not seeing the validity in it initially? And if so, what would your advice be about kind of sticking through it to get to the other side, to see the benefits?
I could definitely see that as an obstacle. We haven't encountered that very frequently, if at all, in the Happier You program. In fact, gratitude tends to be one of the most popular weeks and the most powerful weeks in the program, because I think people can connect with it in very, very small ways and big ways, right? So there's little bits of gratitude that they might want to pull in for around relationships, or their job, or in who they are, or there may be grander activities that they may invest themselves in terms of making lists and writing about gratitude, or writing a full gratitude letter, or finding a gratitude location and accessing a mindfulness approach to feeling thankful. It goes back to the idea of, if somebody's feeling hesitation or feeling like it's not, I'm having trouble reaching for a fullness mindset, or feeling thankful for something going on in my life right now, so I don't want to be forced in that direction, I would kind of come back to this idea of self-acceptance, being the observer to whatever is happening, and just recognizing maybe gratitude for that decision, just to be with your stress and your unhappiness, and so we can be grateful for that kind of choice as well, without needing it to be something external.
So, for those who have gone through the 7 weeks of the Happier You, what advice do you have for maintaining the lessons that you've taken from the book or the course?
I think it comes down to practice. And some of the research in positive psychology shows that dose-dependent relationship, that the more you implement the activities or some of the exercises, the more likely you're going to benefit in a long-term way. So just like developing any habit, it's repetition, and it's choosing. One of the wonderful things about the book and the program is that it offers a menu of options. So if somebody really gravitates toward kindness and really is fulfilling kindness through their actions toward others and toward themselves, maybe that's the skill that they focus in on and work to develop and work to incorporate each day in very intentional ways. Or maybe it's a combination of personal strengths awareness and gratitude, or maybe it's the mindfulness piece in the beginning of good things that happen. So the right fit is what this program in the book allows. And I'm just happy if somebody connects with one element, maybe a single exercise out of the 32 that are in the book, that really make a difference for them.
Scott, we saw on our Instagram channel when we did a giveaway that a lot of people were really interested in a happier you and focusing on gratitude and positivity. But I wanted to say one of the really interesting things was we had someone comment that their team was working on it at work. Is this program something that you can see applied to, several different types of groups of people, like either to work through it together individually, or how far does that reach?
Yeah, I would say any group in any organization would potentially benefit from the program. It was designed, when we run the program virtually and in person, but especially virtually when so many of us now are doing remote work. It fosters a sense of community and shared positivity and shared good experience as people are learning the skills. It's always fun to explore a good event when you have other people who are resonating with you around that good event. And what I think that does within organizations and groups, it builds community, it builds a positive sense of self-regard, because if somebody is really liking something else that I like, or seeing a strength in me and celebrating that also in themselves, it really does reinforce self-worth and a sense of efficacy in life. And we know that positivity spreads socially. It's been studied through social networks that when somebody posts something positive on social media, that 3, 4, potentially 5 people down the line may experience a shift in their mood as a result of that media post. It works the other way too with negative posts, but certainly we can take advantage of this idea of a social catalyst of positive thinking, feeling, and doing, and celebration of life, that I think will go a long way toward helping us address the isolation that we've all been encountering during the pandemic, during this difficult time.
Well, Scott, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Just one thought is, if your listeners are interested in acquiring a foundation of knowledge in the area of positive psychology, thinking about, how might this benefit, my career as an entrepreneur, as a psychologist, as a healthcare worker, in business, in marketing and communications. I'm beginning a master in applied positive psychology program at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. And it's opening this coming fall 2022. So if your listeners are interested, you can go to pcom.edu to explore that program. And you go through the Happier You program and learn how to facilitate the program through that program while you get your master's degree. It's all online, all virtual. You can complete it in 1 year. And we're really excited because it gives a broad scope of knowledge and applied skill set around a lot of what we've talked about today, almost all of what we've talked about today. So I'd be happy to share more with your listeners if they're interested.
That's really exciting, Scott. Thanks for sharing. I'm sure there would be a good amount of people who would be interested in that as well. Well, we just wanted to say thank you for coming on here and having this conversation with us. It's been such a pleasure to work on this book and to just see the really thankful responses from people who have read your book, who have gone through the program, and so we're just really thankful to put this out into the world as well.
Well, Kendall, Cassie, I'm so grateful for both of you and for New Harbinger for sharing these thoughts with the world. And we're all collectively doing a lot of good out there. So I really appreciate you.
Thanks so much.
Happier You is an uplifting guide that offers a unique 7-week positive psychology program for developing the habits you need to turn the negativity effect into a positivity reflex. Based on the author's A Happier You wellness program, the tools and techniques in this book can be incorporated into your daily routine to kickstart your positivity engine, boost your resilience in stressful situations, and look at life through a new, more optimistic lens. If you're ready to look on the bright side, this uplifting guide will show you how to look inside to find the light of optimism. Visit our website at www.newharbinger.com and use coupon code PODCAST25 to receive 25% off your entire order.
New Harbinger Publications is an independent, employee-owned publisher of books on psychology, health, spirituality, and personal growth. For nearly 50 years, our evidence-based self-help books and pioneering workbooks have helped readers make positive changes to improve mental health and well-being. Founded by psychologists Matthew McKay and Patrick Fanning, New Harbinger is proud to be an employee-owned company. Our books reflect our core values of integrity, sustainability, compassion, and trust. Written by leaders in the field and recommended by therapists worldwide, New Harbinger books are practical, accessible, and provide real tools for real change.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love if you rated, reviewed, and subscribed to the show, and we hope you might share it with anyone who might benefit from the content. This podcast is not a substitute for counseling with a licensed provider.
Join the New Harbinger Clinicians Club, a free membership club exclusively for mental health professionals. Sign up today and you'll receive a special welcome gift, 35% off all professional books, free client resources, free ebooks throughout the year, access to private sales, a subscription to our Quick Tips for Therapists email program, and more. Visit newharbinger.com/clinicians-club for more information.